Action. What up, what up, what up? Ben Saul back in the house. I've been thinking a lot about toxic workplaces and behaviors, which can really make or break a career. It's crucial to identify a toxic environment and promptly be prepared to either leave or fight against the negativity. I generally feel that toxic work environments start and end with the manager. There are so many characteristics that describe a toxic workplace, but most of them you don't recognize immediately. It may take some time to witness certain behaviors once you get to know the workplace. I found a good list of these toxic behaviors. Alright. But I feel that most entries on this list focuses on things that it may take a while to observe. Most of the things are subtle things that might be passed off as something else. Here's a list of things to look out for. To me, are right away indicators of toxicity in the workplace. The moment you witness any of these, you should start planning your exit or start building your strategy on how to fight it. I don't advocate fighting it, which I'll get into later. I have tried my absolute best in attempting to avoid toxic situations by doing the research on companies' work reviews, possibly visiting the location to witness the interactions, and asking in-depth questions during the interview process. My list of interview questions for an employer is very extensive, but I was naive enough to believe that a company would answer those questions truthfully. Which leads me to my first entry on the list: deception. In the cannabis industry, I once accepted a management position after being deceived on a very serious matter. My very first question to any cannabis company was, do they have any state compliance violations that would affect my employment? The hiring manager told me no, they had none. To find out months later, the company had priors. I found this out due to the company receiving another compliance violation within my first 90 days. And I, as well as other managers, were required to sign a paper stating that if the company received any more compliance violation, I understand I could be terminated. Now this ultimately affecting my employment. If you watch any of my cannabis videos, I've mentioned you as an employee do not want to be in the orbit of a company that has compliance issues. It could get you banned from the industry. I've learned throughout my life that in a relationship, any relationship that starts out on the foundation of deception will eventually fall. Next on the list, lack of communication. Have you ever experienced a company with no team meetings? Most, if not all, communication was done through emails from the supervisor, and then the supervisor to the managers. Managers were expected to communicate that to the employees. It almost takes the humanity out of things and gives you the feeling of being in a dictatorship where shit rolls downhill. One of the biggest breakdowns in any relationship is the lack of communication. If you have a manager that refuses to have team meetings, are you really a team or a bunch of individuals? That right there within itself should tell you all you need to know and how fast you should get the hell out of there. Next would be passive-aggressive comments. Within the first 20 days of me working a new position, I began to notice a pattern of passive-aggressive comments and behaviors, indirect comments that would call out an employee's actions or behaviors publicly with zero face-to-face communication with the employee the passive-aggressive comments were targeting. I caught several strays. So many, I started watching YouTube videos every night after work on how to deal with passive-aggressive behavior. After about 4 months, I remember telling another manager, I can't get mad at the passive-aggressive behavior and comments that my fellow managers make because I received an email response with passive aggressive messages from the people that were above the GM. Bad behavior is normalized when it comes from the top. It becomes the culture. Next on the list, rules don't apply to everyone equally, condoning bad behavior and cliques. Have you ever noticed that some people at the job can get away with almost murder, and then there's others that can sneeze wrong and you won't see them anymore? Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. What about comments like, I hate my fucking job, I hate this fucking place, I'm just here, or my favorite, that's not my job? Have you ever noticed that only certain people can say those things but not everyone? I'm not even going to get into the comments because those are toxic within itself. A person that outwardly and openly states these things are miserable. But just remember, misery loves company, so eventually their misery will rub off on you and the team. The fact that this behavior has not been checked or regulated by management make these comments even more toxic, because if they can get away with saying this openly and outwardly, what else are they going to get away with saying or doing? Next on my list would be GM not present or lacks leadership. Being a GM is a huge responsibility, yes, but part of being a GM, a big part of being a GM, is understanding the dynamics of each shift so that they may be able to make the best operational informed decisions. The only way to do that is to be in the trenches with their employees. You're not going to understand the dynamics of a night shift working straight days or vice versa. I worked for a GM that only scheduled day and night shifts, no mids, in a fast-paced retail store. Can you imagine the chaos during shift change? Lacking leadership. I believe one of the reasons managers don't want to have a town hall meeting is because they don't want to hear or deal with the employees' complaints. As a leader, I believe it is important to hear all forms of critique and criticism, even though some may not know how to express it in the proper manner. It still needs to be heard. Furthermore, there's nothing wrong with employees blowing off a little steam every now and again. It lets the hot air out of the room. And as a manager, you should be engaged in active listening. Never mind how the message was conveyed. As long as it's respectful, listen to the message. To me, this is one of the most important jobs of being a leader and not just a manager. If you listen to everything that's being said, it will help you grow and get better. Your employees have complaints for a reason, and if you listen to those complaints, a good leader will be able to solve 90% of those issues. But if you're never there, those complaints fall on deaf ears, which plants the seeds for resentment. Next on my list would be more managers than leaders passing the buck. I remember during an interviewer asked me once, was I the type of person that would pass the buck? And without even thinking, I responded, I'm the one the buck gets passed to, and I'm tired of it. People, we as humans cannot change what we don't acknowledge. If you have been put in a supervisory position, you should feel an obligation to make those who work for you better. How do you do that? By acknowledging the good, the bad, and the ugly. Managers manage problems. Leaders solve problems and move on to the next. Put it this way, if you continue to manage the same problems, technically, you're the problem. Next on my list, scorekeepers. Whether it's because they're not getting any recognition or constantly want the glory, scorekeepers have to keep tally of all the tasks they do or have done. In a competitive spirit, this is fine. However, if scorekeeping is repetitive, it becomes a toxic competition. You will witness employees find loopholes to get an advantage. And this will also begin to point out the tasks that the other employees aren't doing, which automatically causes resentment. Next, constant drama. Have you ever noticed there are some people at the workplace that talk more about their fellow employees' personal lives than they do operational issues with the company that could easily be resolved? Or the one person that asks you your opinions on employees and operations but don't offer any? These are the gossipers who whisper in the shadows but have very bad intention. They are addicted to drama, and you are about to be part of it if you indulge. Don't fall for it. Your words will not be your words. They will edit your words, and it won't represent you when they repeat them. Those who are usually in the center of drama will cause drama even if there is none, and you could easily be their next victim. There was a female customer who asked me to help her get a job. So I gave her my business card, told her to contact me because getting into the industry is not very easy. 3 hours later, I get a call from her boyfriend saying that I made a pass at her. Drama. The creation of drama when there is none. I probably should have listened to my own teachings, huh? Next, the number of employees who are defensive or miserable will outnumber the happy. I just work here. I hate this job. That's not my job. In my experience, those are the people who gossip the most, tries to be in everyone's business, keeps morale low, stirs up controversy, makes passive-aggressive comments, keeps score of their accomplishment, and do the bare minimum. Mainly, they are there for a paycheck or whatever perks they can get, but they do not enjoy their life. Therefore, they won't enjoy their work life and will make their coworkers miserable. Depending on the numbers, it's usually normal to have 1, maybe 2 employees like that. But if that number outnumbers the happy, you better run. Lastly, feelings of isolation. Most, if not all, of these tendencies, behaviors, or actions on this list will create feelings of isolation. You may begin to feel that there is something wrong with you, and that's not the case. The case is you're a square peg attempting to fit in a round hole. The bottom line, you don't fucking belong. Excuse my language, but you don't. As I stated, you could fight the good fight, but then there'll be deeper feelings of isolation depending on how far up this toxicity runs. If it runs all the way to the top, then you're going to be isolated. I myself don't have the patience to fight, especially if the toxicity reaches all the way to the top. It's the culture. There's nothing you're going to do about that. I'd rather move on and find something better. You may say to yourself, yeah, but I don't want to continue to job hop. It may look bad. What will look bad is if you stay in a toxic environment and it consumes you and you end up losing your job. After leaving a toxic environment, I was applying for a new job, and an interviewer asked me, was I working? And I told them no. And they proceeded to say, you left a job without finding another, wasn't very smart. Passive aggressive. I know how to deal with passive aggressiveness now. And what I did was I turned the tables. I asked the interviewer, have you ever been in a bad relationship that you knew you should have left long before it got to a flashpoint? Were you able to look back on it and say to yourself, if I would have only left sooner? Did staying in that relationship cause you more stress and anguish? Did it affect you mentally? Then I asked, who did you blame? Did you blame the person? Did you blame the situation? Or did you blame yourself for staying so long? I believe we're either part of the problem or part of the solution, and sometimes the problem is staying longer than we should. Needless to say, I got the job offer. Lastly, a toxic work environment is subjective. It really depends on what you are willing to tolerate. If all a person knows is bad, then bad will be their norm. But if you knew better, you'd do better. Peace.